This series is made possible by all of my patrons. More about that at the end of the video.
Oh, hello there! Didn't see you. Well, welcome to the first installment of Miro's Hoya Summer Camp. Today we're going to talk about something that is very controversial. My accent. No, we're not going to talk about that, but I did get a couple of comments there. However, we will indeed talk about a controversial topic, and that is how much water do Hoyas really need? And don't worry, we're not going to water my Hoyas today, even though they need it. This is just a prop. It's empty. Nothing. I could have watered them, yes, I could have filled this since I already brought it here and watered them, but no such luck for you today, my darlings, no such luck. Maybe tomorrow. Probably not, though. Don't get your hopes up. Stay level and hopeless. Anyways, let's switch up the angle. It is perhaps out of order that I decided to start with watering of all things, but I just thought to myself, since this is kind of a series for beginners, that perhaps you already have your new Hoya, it arrived in a potting mix of some sorts, and you are just really interested where to take it from here. So that is why we are starting with watering, but don't worry, next week we are going to talk about the potting mixes, my favorite topic, and we will talk all things that are concerned with Hoya growth. How much water your Hoya need and when to water your Hoya will largely depend on the type of the plant that you have. Believe it or not all of the Hoyas require the same amount of water, and there is just so much difference. Some of them require as much water as calatheas, and some of them do not require that much water at all. Environmental factors play a big role here as well: light, temperature, humidity, but also other things will be important, like the size of the pot, generally the size of your plant, how well established it is it a cutting that is just starting to root or has recently rooted, or is it a big established plant? So we will kind of talk about all of these today. Now I'm going to give a very generalized advice here when to water your Hoya, and we're gonna talk about it, but I also want you not to follow it, if that makes any sense. And the reason why I'm saying it is because a lot of people will tell you that Hoyas need watering once or twice a month. We're not gonna go there. Not even those that don't want water want to be watered once or twice a month. In general, Hoyas will need to be watered every week, once a week. Now, let's break that down. Depending on the season, on the type of your Hoya, and your conditions, they may need watering more than this or less than this. But I'm saying once a week because I think a lot of them will be okay if you check them once a week to see if they need water. What is excluded here is if you grow Hoyas in self-watering pots, then no. Once a week is not necessary. Probably every 2 to 3 weeks, even once a month. But we're gonna talk about that a little bit later in the video. I don't know why I said this. There's no lists. As I previously said, some Hoyas need less water and some Hoyas need more water. Hoyas that will need less water are usually those that have very thick, succulent leaves, usually the big-leaved species, and those that need more water are the thin-leaved species or species with small leaves. As always, there are exceptions, so these are kind of general rules so you can get an idea, but I will always recommend to kind of follow your plant and see what it wants. Hoyas like Loki, Multiflora, Lasiantha, and also Praetori, which is now Lasiantha, Medinillifolia, which is not a beginner plant, so I hope that none of the beginners have it because it's gonna be very frustrating. Those Hoyas will need more frequent watering. In my experience, Hoyas such as Praetori and Multiflora don't last a week if it's a big plant and the pot is not so big and it's not self-watering. My Praetori will very quickly start to kind of look wilted. For these Hoyas, if you're a beginner, but also if you are like a Hoya veteran, I think it's really best to grow these in self-watering pots just to save yourself trouble. They are also more likely to bloom more frequently because when you underwater them, they blast the buds and it's a whole thing. And then if you give them too much water, then they also blast. It's too much. I think it's best to keep these in self-watering pots. That's what I do now with my Hoyas, with most of my Hoyas actually, because self-watering pots will do really well for many species, but especially for these thin-leaved species. Hoyas with small leaves will also like more water. Hoyas like Chinchungensis, Engleriana, Vaccinioides, even Hoya lacunosa, those Hoyas will want a little bit more water. Again, I would check them once a week. From my experience, plants such as Chinkongensis and Gleriana vaccinoides will need even more water than that. This all depends on your growing conditions, on your potting mix, the size of your plant, and the size of the pot that your plant is in. Some Hoyas are going to be more forgiving when you forget to water them, and some are never going to forgive you whatsoever. I'm just going to tell you right away, I'm still struggling with my Hoya vaccinoides because she has been underwatered on the regular pretty much, and she did not appreciate it, and she just refuses to recover. They're not gonna become so dramatic once you underwater them. You can do it more times. I mean, I don't recommend it, by the way, just so we get that clear. But again, try that this does not become a habit with some because they're really, really tough to recover. Some other Hoyas that have kind of bigger and succulent leaves like Finlaysoni, Clemenciorum, they are more forgiving compared to these, and they really are not going to mind so much. Another thing that is important here is that not all Hoyas will develop the root system the same, and they don't all take up water the same, if that makes sense. So for example, something like Hoya undulata really slowly takes up the water through its roots. So once you underwater it, it may take a while to kind of plump up. And a lot of the times what can happen when you underwater a Hoya, and trust me, I am underwatering veteran, the roots will die back and you will get root rot. Not only overwatering is going to kill your Hoya, but also severe underwatering. Trust me, been there, done that many times. They didn't completely die, they had to be restarted, but you know, just to get that out there, the myth that only overwatering kills your Hoyas is untrue. Underwatering kills them as well. And I would say just as much as overwatering. Now, how to know what is the right time to water your Hoya? The best way really is to kind of follow your plant to know some of the signs. I would really avoid the taco test, and I have to say that I am very proud that a lot of the big YouTubers are not recommending the taco test anymore. I will just give all of the credit to myself here because I have talked about underwatering many times. And the issue with the taco test is if you see your Hoya wrinkled and dry to that point that the leaves become very pliable, you are in the danger zone when it comes to the root system and losing the root system. Carnosa will recover very easily unless it's compacta. That one can be tricky. Not tricky to grow, but like if you underwater her pretty severely, you're not gonna have a fun time. In my opinion, she is the most likely of the carnosas to lose the root system, and you will have to restart her again. But if we look at some other species like Hoya undulata, for example, and if you get to that pliable leaf stage, you are really in the risky territory because it can lose the root system pretty easily. Since this is a beginner series, I'm not going to go too much into that topic, but I just wanted to mention because I just assume that once we finish this Hoya summer school, you're all gonna move to the intermediate or advanced level, or you know, maybe there are some advanced Hoya growers here. So I think this is something that is important to mention. And again, something like Medinellifolia has very sensitive root system, so if you cannot underwater those, that would be best. In my opinion, it is not always easy to know which of these Hoyas is more sensitive than others, which one has more sensitive root system. Some of the Hoyas that I thought are going to be very resilient turned out not to be. For example, Hoya Wayeti / Kentiana. I thought that one was going to be more resilient because it is so widespread, but turns out I can rot that one pretty easily, and I grow mine exclusively in inorganic mix because I tried her in organic mix several times and did not work. It wasn't pretty, wasn't good. Of course, the size of the plant and the size of the pot play a big role. If you have a big plant in a small pot, she will need watering more than once a week. My Hoya compacta, inner variegated Hoya compacta, definitely needs to be watered twice a week. It is in pon. It is in 8 centimeter pot, and I think it's like half a meter long at this point. Hold on, we can bring her. All right, when I said that she is half a meter long, I think I was very enthusiastic, but that also means that it's very easy to trick me in how long something is. So this is the inner variegated Hoya compacta, and as you can see, she is underwatered at this point, and this is not great. She's also in quite a small pot, and she is in pon and not self-watering, by the way. You can just see the wrinkles there. Maybe on this side it's easier to see. So that's not great. And we definitely want to avoid this stage, especially with Hoya compacta. She will recover because not all of the leaves are wrinkled, and if all of them were very soft, it would be kind of problematic, but I think we are in good territory right here. And of course, what is also important to know is that your plants are more likely going to grow faster if you water them more regularly. Hoyas are kind of notorious for slow growth, which in my opinion, unless you have mites and unless you are underwatering your plant, that is not true. Some Hoyas of course are slower than others, but I wouldn't say that they're really that slow. Depending on your environment, your Hoya will also need more or less water. So for example, if you have your Hoya under grow light and if you keep it in on room temperature, you don't really have to think about the seasons. They are going to be actively growing throughout the year. So I would just water them regularly and fertilize them regularly all year round. However, if you grow your Hoyas without the grow lights, or if it gets cooler in your room, like significantly cooler, for example under 20 degrees, then you might need to adjust your watering in winter versus the summer and vice versa. Humidity will also play a role, so in more humid spaces you don't need to water as frequently. In my grow tents I have to water much less than in my room, and now because it is summer and I have my AC on and it's also hot, they dry out pretty quickly. This was watered less than a week ago. It's already dry. And I know that this one doesn't have root rot yet, but we're probably on the way there because we can see some of the roots here and they do not peel off. If they start to peel off and to fall apart, that means that you have dry rot on your hand. Of course, that's when they are outside of the pot. If they're in the potting mix, you will have to kind of inspect differently. I'm not going to go into this part way too much because I think it's just beyond the scope of this video, but if your Hoya has wrinkly leaves and you watered it and even 24 hours later it still has wrinkly leaves, you're most likely dealing with root rot, unfortunately. Whether it's dry rot, it doesn't matter, or due to overwatering, you're most likely going to know what category you fall under. You will probably need to take a couple of cuttings and root that again. Or you could also be having root mealybug infestation, and that is one of the signs of root mealybug infestation, is that your plant will just not hydrate after you water it, meaning the roots are damaged. But that is kind of beyond the scope of this video. We really want to stick to watering. If a lot of the times the vines die back, maybe you're having a watering issue, maybe you're underwatering. It could of course also be due to mites, so make sure to inspect your plant. Or if it loses baby leaves a lot, again, it could be mites, it could be underwatering. A lot of the situations, actually, it's like, it could be mites, it could be underwatering, so it doesn't really help us. They should really be more helpful, I think. But I think if you're insecure about watering, again, I would really recommend self-watering pots. This is not sponsored by self-watering pots, but I just believe in self-watering pots. I love self-watering pots, and many growers grow in self-watering pots. They may not be efficient for all of the Hoyas, but so far they've been working pretty well for most of my Hoyas. And again, this is something that I have said many times before. Let's not forget that these are tropical plants. This is Hoya and cacti, two completely different plants. Where Hoyas are from, they will most likely get rain every day. Not all of them, but in majority of the cases, this will be the truth. Some of the Hoyas that we find in big box stores are going to be more forgiving, but also I just kind of want to help you out here and kind of give you the foundation so you can start expanding your collection, because that is my goal, definitely. And of course, how much you need to water your Hoya will depend on the potting mix. Potting mixes that have cocoa peat or peat in them, or even moss, will require less watering because those are some of the ingredients that hold on to moisture more. If you grow in pond, and especially if you grow in pond without self-watering and in just room ambient temperature, humidity and all of that like a savage, then they will need pretty frequent watering. I was that savage too, and then I just couldn't keep up. For me, for how many plants I have, it is impossible to grow them in pond without self-watering and just in the room. So you will have to most likely water more if you have a more airy mix, and if you have a more dense mix with a lot of peat and not a lot of perlite or not a lot of bark, then you will need to water less. But I do in general recommend quite airy mixes for most of the Hoyas. With some of them, I have definitely reduced the perlite and bark a lot with thin-leaved Hoyas, like the common thin-leaved Hoyas, Pretoria, Lasiantha, Multiflora, Loki, small-leaved species like Chinhogan, Singleriana, Vatsinioides. I have really kind of let go of the perlite. Some of the thin-leaf species are prone to rot, like Medinellifolia, but again, we're not going to talk about that today because, again, I just don't think that a lot of the beginners are growing that plant. And one last thing is related to cuttings. The best way is to keep cuttings moist. I would recommend not really watering your cuttings, but having something like a sprayer and just making sure that you spray them. If you have cuttings, it's best to keep them into clear pots. In general, until you kind of get the hang of watering, I think clear pots are a good idea. Not all of my plants are in clear pots and I just have the hang of watering. And also, you know, you're gonna follow your Hoya as it grows. That is all for today. I hope that I kept it under 15 minutes. The goal of this series is for all of the videos to be under 15 minutes, so they're kind of bite-sized pieces and digestible information. There is a lot more to talk about watering, and I may make a longer video about watering, like an hour-long video, and we can get into all the nooks and crannies and what influences how much water your Hoya will need. But I think this is just good enough for beginner level and even for intermediate level. And a lot of this, when it comes to watering, I just think you have to learn by yourself. I think a video where we talk about every specific species, how much water it needs, it would be like, that's a blog. That's not something for video, or that's like a highlight on a species. But I did want to mention some species like Hoya undulata just to kind of illustrate that not all of the big-leaved and more succulent or firm-leaved Hoyas will want less water. From my experience, Hoya undulata is a thirsty Hoya as well. It will all depend. You will kind of have to get to know your plant, so I recommend checking them every week. Right now, I do underwater my plants because I know which of them can be underwatered, and usually the ones that cannot are in the tents or in the cabinets, so they can stayed watered for longer because those are very good at keeping the moisture. I mean, tents and the cabinets, but you know, some of them that can stand to be underwatered, they are outside non-special conditions. I apologize to all of you that you're in such cruel conditions, but really a lot of the times you will have to learn your mistakes, and that's fine. If you check your Hoyas pretty frequently, you will be able to act in time. You will be able to save them if something starts to happen. I was checking my Hoyas pretty frequently in the beginning. In the first half a year, I was really intense and on it. Can't even believe that I would check them so frequently, because now those poor plants. Sometimes a week will pass by and I will not give a Hoya a look. They all live in my heart. If you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And all of the Hoya veterans, leave some watering tips if you have them. Also, if you have any question about watering, leave it in the comment below and I will try to get to as many questions as I can. And if I don't, someone else is also welcome to help out. Get the conversation going. I will see you very soon in the regular video and also very soon in the next Hoya Summer Camp video, which is coming out next Wednesday. Make sure to turn on that notification bell because you definitely love notifications, just like all of us. Me especially. Love them, live for them. Have a wonderful week until Sunday when the next video comes out. It sounds like it will be a horrific moment. I'm sorry. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be fun. Trust me. I would like to thank all of my patrons who make content like this possible. Thank you so much for your incredible support. A big shout out to my $5 patrons. My 3 anonymous patrons, Alex von Siebenthal, Anne-Margaret Moyne, Angela Bernard, Angela Parrish, and C. Ashley Hoyas, Beth Gibson, Betsy, Catherine Molina, Danube Daniels, Daria Kaminska, Diane Sikorsky, Farah, Gina Geise, Go Green Tropical, Heather Oppenkamp, Hoji Scott, Houseplant Heather, Hoya Heather, Yana Griffin, Jessica Chia, Yavin Denot, Cara, Casey Gross, Callie Cool, Kelso, Kiwi Mochi, Kristen Sherwood, LePlan Steph, Mandy Milliken, Marcel Har, Mars B, Martina, Alif Per Marty Miller, Mary Rose, Melissa Walker, Michael Curley, Nicole Ferranti, Moa Edmond, Neil Yang, Miha Basu, Nicole Moreau, Nicole and Caleb of Schleef Tropical, Snita Macy, PJ, Plan Druid, Rachel Peterson, Robin L. Jennings, Robin Roos, Salam Adal, Sherry Kumar, Stephanie H2O, Sybil Williams, Tanya, Tessa Martins, Tia B, TJWO, Wendy Foreman, Wendy Rossman, Youth of the Wallamuts, Zardarama, and Zlokobniponi. Also a big thank you to my $3 patrons. patrons: Angelina Farnan, Anna K, Brenda Little, Brianna Phillips, Kilon, Claudia L, Erin Keenan, Lisa Helling, Morgan Kennedy, Nella, Plantolenia Ringlov, and Tang Watanasria Cool. And a thank you to my $1 patrons: Sari, Constance, Couture Helvetica, Amelia Bronson, Joanna Peterson, Jolie Sullivan, Kayla Vavra, Lauren M, Lauren Ann Subramaniam, Luzman Fernandez, Neely Spicer, and Olivia Chinmuller.